before I start my discussion for today, I want you to ask yourselves of what makes us think, feel, and behave the way we do. For us to know those questions, the psychology can help us. Sometimes we wonder why is that some people can remember things easily and can memorize things in a short period of time. There are a lot of questions that comes on our mind on what we believe on our perceptions in different things. So, it is very important to understand the psychological foundation of the curriculum to know its significance to students, especially to their behaviors and personality. So, let us now proceed to the psychological foundation of the curriculum. Psychology provides information about the teaching and learning process. It also seeks answers as to how a curriculum will be organized to achieve students' learning at the optimum level and what amount of information they can absorb in learning the various contents of the curriculum. So, we all know that psychology is the scientific study of mental functions and behavior, including the perception, cognition, behavior, emotion, personality, and interpersonal relationships. Now, let us learn on how curriculum started through the psychological foundation. According to Ornstein and Hankins, there are three groups of learning theories found in psychological foundation of curriculum. And these are behaviorism or association theories, the cognitive information processing theories, and the humanistic theories. Now let's talk about the association and behaviorism. So in this, the behaviorism is the learning is considered a habit formation. So, the more you practice, the more that it will be part of your system, especially your brain. Teaching is regarded as arranging learning experiences in such a way as to promote desirable behavior. So, also the behaviorists believe that behavior can be conditioned by altering the environment. For example is, a teacher said to her student, if you complete all of your homework assignments, I will drop your lowest grades. So, it is manipulation of stimulus equal to desired response. So, in that way, the teacher is manipulating the stimulus for the desired response of the student. The student will comply and follow what his teacher said, or the teacher will drop her lowest grade. Now, let's talk about the proponents under the behaviorism. Ivan Pavlov. He is a Russian psychologist. He is the father of classical conditioning theory or the SR theory. So, according to him, the key to learning is early as years of life is to train them what you want them to become. So, the SR theory is the foundation of learning practice and called indoctrination. He showed that an organism can associate a particular stimulus or the S with a particular response or the R. A stimulus is equal to response. So therefore, learning is the result of an association formed between a stimulus and a response. So, in this way, it will also become a foundation to curriculum because how can a student learn? Is it because of a response. So there should be a stimulus that should be done so there would be response to learn. So now let's talk about Edward Thorndike. Edward Thorndike championed the connectionism theory. He proposed the three laws of learning. So those laws are law of readiness, law of exercise, and the law of effect. So let us tackle first about the law of readiness. So what is the law of readiness? So certain behaviors are more likely to be learned than others because the nervous system of the organism is ready to make the connection leading to a satisfying state of affairs. So we must consider the readiness of a child because instead of imparting to them some knowledge, if they are not ready, you will just destroy their mindsets. Or if you force to teach them some lessons which are not suitable or they're not capable of, they will not learn. So for example, you are teaching an algebra to grade 1 students. So they cannot learn. It's because it is not suitable or it does not fit in on their grades. So when someone is ready to perform some act, to do is satisfying. Number 2, when someone is ready to perform some act, not to do is annoying. So number 3, when someone is not ready to perform some act and is forced to do so, it is annoying. Yes. So those 3 are very understandable, so I will no longer explain those. So sometimes we ask, why do we need to study this? It's because we need to study this because without knowing this, in making a curriculum, we should consider the readiness of a child. The next law is the law of exercise. It is where the connection bet. Stimulus and response will be strengthened with practice. So in here, the more you exercise, the more you practice, the more you will be more strengthened or developed, or there's always an improvement. So the law of exercise had 2 parts. So those 2 are the law of disuse and the law of use. So those 2 are very understandable. In this law, it's stated that connections grow stronger when used, where strength is vigor and duration, as well as the frequency of its making, and grow weaker when not used. So we can see this law of exercise to skills or the talent. The more you practice, the more it will become developed or it will be developed. The law of effect. The response that is reinforced or positive will become habitual. So, the more the positive stimuli we have, the more response will repeat, or the more response of a student or a person will become habitual. Behavior followed by reward is more likely to occur, and behavior followed by unfavorable consequences less likely to occur. So Thorndike said that if we will command the children or the students, it is better that our reinforcement is positive because the child will do it habitual. And now let us proceed to Robert Gagnon. So he proposed the hierarchical learning theory. So the learning theory follows a hierarchy. When we say hierarchy, it is an organizational structure in which items are ranked according to the level of importance. So, according to him, behavior is based on prerequisite conditions. Among the behaviorists, Robert Gagnon's hierarchical learning or sets of behavior and the 5 learning outcomes became classic examples. This includes the intellectual skills or knowing how to categorize and use symbols, forming concepts, and problem solving. Second one is the information or knowing what, knowledge about facts, dates, and names. The third one is the cognitive strategies or learning skills. The fourth one is the motor skills, and the last one is the attitudes, feeling, and emotions, and learning through experience. So, those listed outcomes overlapped with the domains in the taxonomy of the educational objectives, which are cognitive, affective, and the psychomotor. B.F. Skinner introduced the operant conditioning. So, Skinner is regarded as the father of operant conditioning, and his work was based on Thorndike's The Law of Effect. According to him, when a particular response or behavior is reinforced or rewarded, the individual is conditioned to respond. So, no wonder if the reinforcement is rewarded, the better is the response. So, Skinner also introduced a new term in the law of effect, which are the positive and the negative reinforcements. Afterwards, there goes the punishment. According to this principle, behavior that is allowed by pleasant consequences is likely to be repeated, and behavior followed by unpleasant consequences is likely to be is likely less to be repeated. Let us proceed to the cognitive information processing theory. So, cognitivists emphasize that learning is primarily cognitive in nature. So, according to Jean Piaget theory, that you cannot explain a thing if you do not experience, or you remember things according to or based on what you already know.
Good day, everyone. Before I go into detail about the other proponents of cognitive information processing theory, let me first introduce myself. My name is Lorely G. Gozo, and I am a BEd 3 student. Our next proponent of cognitive learning theory is Lev Vygotsky. He was a Russian teacher who is considered a pioneer in learning in social context. His theories emphasizes the cultural transmission and development, learning precedes development, and socio-cultural development theory. In children transmission and development, children could, as a result of their interaction with society, actually perform certain cognitive actions prior to arriving at a developmental stage. In his theory stated that learning precedes development, unlike Jean Piaget, who believed development comes before learning. Vygotsky believed that learning comes before development and that one must learn first to be able to develop into a functioning human being. Clearly, Lev Vygotsky believed that learning was influenced by the culture and language of the child's surroundings. According to the case to learning Vygotsky's theories, the first thing to keep in mind is pedagogy learning processes that lead to development. Then, the child is an active agent in his or her educational process. Our next proponent for this philosophical perspective is Howard Gardner. He is a developmental psychologist best known for his theory of multiple intelligences. His theory of multiple intelligences proposes that people are not born with all the intelligence they will ever have. Humans have several different ways of processing information, and these ways are relatively independent of one another. According to Gardner's multiple intelligences, there are 8 different types of intelligence. These multiple intelligences are first linguistic intelligence, used in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. This is what we call the word smart. Second, logical mathematical intelligence, used in thinking logically and in solving mathematics problems. This is what we call the number smart. Third is musical intelligence, used in singing and in appreciating music. This is what we call the music smart. Fourth is spatial intelligence, used in negotiating the physical environment. This is what we call the picture smart. Fifth is the bodily kinesthetic intelligence, used in athletics and in dancing. This is what we call the body smart. Sixth, interpersonal intelligence, used in relating to other people. This is what we call the people smart. Seventh, interpersonal intelligence, used in understanding ourselves. This is what we call the self-smart. And the last one is naturalistic intelligence, used to identify, classify, and manipulate elements of the environment, objects, animals, or plants. This is what we call the nature smart. Our last proponent for the cognitive philosophical perspective is Daniel Goleman. He is a scientific journalist, author, and psychologist. According to him, emotion contains the power to affect action. He called this emotional quotient. He popularized the concept of emotional intelligence, or EQ, in 1995 in his book Emotional Intelligence: Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. He defined emotional intelligence as the ability of individuals to recognize their feelings and those of others for motivation and management of emotions for themselves and their relationship with others. By the way, Goleman is not the founder of emotional intelligence theory, otherwise known as the EQ. There are 4 major qualities of emotional intelligence. First to come up is the so-called self-awareness. This is about recognizing our own emotions and how they affect our thoughts and behavior. Second is the self-management, which means to control impulsive feelings and behaviors, manage our emotions in healthy ways. Third is social awareness, which pertains to understand the emotions, needs, and concerns of other people. Lastly is relationship management, which means knowing how to develop and maintain good relationships. As a conclusion of Daniel Goleman's perspectives about emotional intelligence, he described EQ as a person's ability to manage his feelings so that those feelings are expressed appropriately and effectively. Now, let's move on to the third learning theory, which is humanistic psychology. Humanistic psychology is concerned with how learners can develop their human potential. Among the humanistic psychologists, curriculum is concerned with the process, not the products. Personal needs, not the subject matter. Psychological meaning, and environmental situations. In this kind of psychological foundation of the curriculum, this approach work on individual empowerment. Whether you are right or not, this is in the sense where you are motivated to be the best person you can be. In humanistic psychology, we have here the Gestalt theory, which clearly states that learning is explained in terms of wholeness of the problem. It is the idea that we don't just concentrate on each and every minor detail. Our minds, on the other hand, are more likely to see objects as fragments of structures. Gestalt's case to learning are as follows. Learning is complex and abstract. Learners analyze the problem, discriminate between essential and non-essential data, and perceive relationships. Lastly, learners will perceive something in relation to the whole. What or how they perceive is related to their previous experiences. Our next proponent is Abraham Maslow, who was famous about his hierarchy of needs, wherein lower levels must be satisfied first before one could function at the higher levels. He advanced the self-actualization theory and classic theory of human needs. A child whose basic needs are not met will not be interested in acquiring knowledge of the world. He also put importance to human emotions based on love and trust. This is the hierarchical levels with a pyramid. We have here at the bottom part of the pyramid the physiological needs, which comprises of food, water, warmth, and rest. Then follows the safety needs, belonging needs, and love needs, esteem needs, and the last one is the self-actualization or the self-fulfillment needs. If there is a deficiency of needs, how can we have the self-fulfillment? Therefore, not everyone will move to the hierarchy up. Our last proponent for the humanistic approach is Carl Rogers. He emphasized on non-directive and therapeutic learning. He is more in the client-centered therapy, as he calls his patients clients. He established counseling procedures and methods for facilitating learning. He proposed that classrooms should become learner-centered and teachers should facilitate learning. Children's perceptions, which are highly individualistic, influence their learning and behavior in class. The key to learning of Carl Rogers' contribution is stated that curriculum is concerned with process, not product, personal needs, not subject matter, psychological meaning, not cognitive scores. That concludes our discussion on the topic of the curriculum's psychological foundation. I hope you get some insight into the topic.